So for this exercise where we're going to practice both wet and wet, or wet on wet and wet on dry, here I have a piece of 8x8 watercolor paper. It's actually a block I have, but you can certainly do this on a piece of 8x10, or you can cut out your own 8x8. And I just use one of these, a compass I think they're called, and just drew a circle. But you know, use any round, you can use a plate or any other round thing. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our puddles ready, and I'm not going to draw anything on. I'm going to go in with my paints. It's going to be a little landscape, and I have my French ultramarine blue, I have my quinacridone coral, and I have my transparent yellow or nickel azo yellow. And I do think I would like, and it's not necessary, if you don't have it, don't worry about it, but I'm going to take some of my cobalt blue, put a little bit of that out, and I'm going to have it quite watered down like that. There you have it. I'm going to take a little bit of the cobalt blue over here, and I am going to, can you see how I rinse my brush out in between? I'm going to go in and I'm just get the tip of my brush in the red and put that over here. See how that turned pretty much reddish purple right away, so we need some more of the cobalt blue there. So I have kind of like a lavender color. I'd like to have a little bit of that for my sky, because that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get some clean water, and I am going to, see, I turn my paper so that my hand is not in the way for the camera, so you can't see what I'm doing, and also so that I don't have to twist my wrists in uncomfortable positions. You know, getting old and feeble and with arthritis and stuff, it's not a good thing. So I'm very carefully going around the circle here at the top and get some more clean water. Follow the circle here and the circle here, and then I'm just going to drag the water down. I'm going to drag it further down. I'm going to paint the sky first, and I'm going to paint it way past where I want the sky to end, just so I don't get a hard line. There's that. And I can actually use this big brush, and let's get a little bit of that purple in here top, like that. And now, even without cleaning out my brush, I'm going in and I just dipped the tip of my brush in that beautiful cobalt blue, or if you don't have it, just use a watered down French ultramarine blue. That'll do the same, and you can do the same with the red in the French ultramarine blue. And I'm going to take a little bit of that purple and kind of get it in here and rinse out my brush, and then I'm just going to make sure that this disappears, so giving it a little bit more water to disappear in. And that's all there is to it. Now we're going to let it dry, and I always like to pick up my paper or my block and then just kind of roll it around and rock it back and forth, just so the colors have a chance to mix and mingle. And you can also pop it up so that it runs in one direction. Now the thing about skies is that they're always darker, and I just had a little imperfection here that I want to just coat some pigment out. So skies are darker at the top, and they get lighter as they move down towards the horizon. That's why I like to tip it this way, so that the pigment runs that way instead of running down this way. I can, you know, tip it so that it mingles a little bit, but overall I would like it to dry kind of like that. So we're going to let that dry, and then comes the fun of painting in a little landscape. Okay, our sky is dry, and I think we got a lovely little bit of color variation, very subtle and very soft, and we got a soft edge here. That's what we wanted. And so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to take, I'm using my number 12 brush. I think it's a good size for this. And then I'm going to take some of my cobalt blue I have left here, and I'm going to just put a little bit of the red in, so get a nice soft purple. And I actually feel like I needed a little bit more cobalt. The red is much stronger than the cobalt blue is what's happening here. So there's that, a little bit more cobalt blue. Let's see, that's more like it. And then I'm going to take, and I'm going to take it with a little tiny brush. Here's number 4. I'm going to take just barely a little smidgen of yellow and put it in here. Of course, yellow and purple are complementary colors, and it's going to gray it down just a little bit. But the yellow is also much stronger than the cobalt blue, so that's why I want to be very careful that I don't overdo it, because I don't want the mountains to look gray and dirty and brown. Just want them to look purpley, but see how that's a more dusky purple, purpley gray color. That's what I want. So I'm loading up my brush, and I'm gonna have my number 8 brush damp and on the standby. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna put in wet on dry a distant mountain range. like that. And right away I want to go in and make sure I don't get a hard edge down here. So I lose that edge, clean it out, and then make sure your brush is not wet, just barely damp, just enough to loosen this edge there. And there we have Distant Mountain Range. We're going to have to let that dry, and then we're going to put one more on. So my mountain is dry, and now we're going to put another mountain in front of it, and it's going to be a little bit darker. So let's first make ourselves a color that's a little bit darker by putting in a little tiny bit of French ultramarine blue to darken it up. There we have it. Maybe a little tiny bit more, and then let's put a dab. See, again it got way too red, but we can fix that. And then just a little bit more water in. We don't want to go dark. Dark is for the foreground. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Maybe tiny bit of that yellow in. There, I think I got a color I like. And then this time, can you see, I did get a little bit of a uneven edge there. So this time I'm going to go in and I'm going to start from this side here with just clean water and put in another mountain shape. And make sure that it doesn't just follow the first one. We want them different. And I'm going to put a little bit more water on so that the pigment has places to run. And let's see how we'll go. Can use this one here. We can fix our shapes. And then I'm just going to let it bleed out. Like that. There we go. And I don't mind, I got a little bit for darker spots some areas. Actually I want to maybe do a couple more of those just on purpose. Like that. And then we're going to let that dry. So our little landscape has dried and I'm quite pleased with it. The only thing I feel is that I feel that it's going a little bit like that way. So I want to put a third little mountain range on to make that feeling go away. So let's get some of our French ultramarine blue and a little bit of our red. There's a nice purple, I really like that. And I'm using my dagger brush here, and I'm gonna have my round brush with clean water on it, and I just want to make sure that I don't get any hard lines where I don't want them. So I just wet where I want to put those front mountains on. I'm going to have to turn it around because I'm left-handed. I want to get over here and just go down and end up here. Load up my brush again now that I can see where I'm at. And I think I want to go up here again, just a little bit. And I want to go in with my damp brush and make sure I don't get any lines here. And I do need to go in with a little bit of a stronger color right up there. Of course I wasn't planning on that, so I kind of have an edge that I don't really like. And you can run in a little bit of a different color here. See, it's more reddish because it's more forward, and that would work just perfect with our atmospheric perspective, meaning that things that are closer to us, they look more defined and have warmer colors. So we take advantage of that. I don't mind that little fuzziness there. And let's just dab in a little bit more here, just so hopefully I can't see that line. And then I'm gonna rinse it out, dab it on my towel. Oops, that's not exactly what I wanted. So let's go in, just get rid of that. See, it's dangerous to dab around when it's damp/wet. So I just need to let this dry, and I'm not going to worry about that area because I'm going to put some trees over it. So I think we're pretty good here. So now I don't want to put any more mountain ranges in. That's my mountain ranges. And now we want to have some trees, but we have to wait for it to dry. So I like that. Yeah, so see how that brought it forward because it has a lot more color. And of course, because it's watercolor and this is still wet, it's gonna fade down once it dries. But I think to me, it's more in balance now. So you do whatever you need to do with your little landscape. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. And I do like what I have here, so I'm gonna just, in general, leave it alone. So our little painting has dried, and I have a couple of new puddles on there, but that doesn't go with this. We're going to stick to our 3 colors, our yellow, our red, and our blue, which is a French ultramarine blue. And I am going to add a couple of brushes to my repertoire now. I'm going to take my liner brush, or my rigger brush, number 2 from my Mimic Squirrel set, and I'm going to take my round brush, number 4, and then I'm still going to have my dagger brush. So what we're going to do now is we're going to paint some evergreen trees here that are a little bit away in the distance, because you know they're behind this ridge of mountains, and then we're going to paint some evergreens that are in front of all the ridges. That's what we're going to do, but we're going to start with this one. In a landscape, we tend to paint from as far away as possible, and then as it comes closer to us. So the top of the page moving down towards us. This is the sky, and then this mountain range is way out there, and then the next one is closer to us, and then this one is even closer to us, and we are somewhere outside. We're somewhere outside here looking in. And the world, of course, we're just looking through a little peephole into the world, so to speak. And so there's a world that continues outside. So you always want to make sure that you don't have anything that kind of stops right on the line or right at the edge of your paper, because it just visually looks like it's trying to fit in, and we don't want that. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to use mainly the blue, French ultramarine blue. I have some here, and we don't want it too strong. Get some of that in here, just clean that area up, and I have some more French ultramarine out here, and I have 2 yellows, so I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in, not too much. Let's see, that's about a good color. And then I want to have some blue, almost blue. See here, now there was a little bit of dirt on, so it's, you know, toned it down a little bit like that, and that's what we're going to go with. So I'm going to take my brush here, and I'm going to just paint in some strokes up. I definitely want to cover up here because I have some area here. So we want to, you know, paint in like this, just a little bit of water. You probably can't even really see it, but that's what I want to have. And I'm going to go in and just dab a little bit and just have the water follow the edge here. Of course, I don't want to paint over that because this is covering up the bottom of these trees. And now let's go in with a little bit of our green here and dab it in some places. Might even do it a little bit like that. And just some strokes up. Can you see how I do that? Upward stroke. And I want to go in and also do some of them more blue. More green, because I want a little color variation here. And it's important that I don't have any white sparkle here. Little hair. So I'm just doing like this. And then be careful here. And here I could do one that's a little bit higher. And now I'm going to put my paper on the side. And now I'm going to try and do some horizontal strokes. And it's just easier for me to do it this way. And I want to make sure that I keep everything damp for a little while. And let's load up our brush. And now we're going to just paint in the tops of these trees, and I can do it a little bit greener some places. That would be kind of nice. We want color variation, and I can put a little bit of blue in and dab down here too to keep it damp for a little while. And you can also use your rigger brush here and do some of these. Can you see how I'm making them look like evergreens just at the tops? Let's put a little bit more blue in. And make sure they're not all the same height. This is not a Christmas tree plantation we're painting, where they were all planted at the same time. This is nature. And can you see how that begins to look like? I think it would be nice if I have one that's a little higher there. Like that. That's a big one. So there, and see, I'm just dibbly-dabbly. Students always make fun of me because, you know, I say it's dibbly-dabbly, just a little dibbly-dabbly. But that's really what it is. And so let's take a little bit more blue. And just make sure that you don't have any shapes that look weird, where people is like, what? But you can see they all flow together. And that's why it's so nice if you have a little color variance here. And then just kind of dab in a couple of places. And again, make sure we don't have any white sparkles down here at the bottom. And that outlines, you know, that's the outline of the mountains. I think this one needs a little bit more pizzazz. What do you think? I think we're pretty okay. I like that. And what we could do, but you don't have to do, but I'm gonna do it. I think it'd be fun if we put a little bit of salt on here. I go real close and I just have a little bit of salt, and I just wanna get it just on these trees. I think that'll give them some nice texture. And I have one top that I don't like. So I'm just gonna go in with my rigger brush and fix this one here. I don't like that one. Before it dries, you wanna do this before, and this one could maybe also use a little help. There, no more. We're gonna leave that to dry. No more fiddling, Eva. No more fiddling for you either. Okay, my little evergreens in the distance have dried, and I think they look pretty good. I got a little bit of salt action, not that much, but that's okay. Just gives them a little bit of texture. So I'm taking the salt off, and I used my credit card because it was kind of stuck. And now we're going to paint the front evergreens. Now we can be a little bit bolder with our color. So we need some more of the French ultramarine blue. Here we go. Get this one activated, get this one activated. And then this one here is with the yellow. See, now we're getting a nice green. Put that in here, bluish green there, like that. Let's get this one, another green here. And we can actually also put a little bit of like a red in here. See how we're kind of getting a brownish color here. That could come in handy. So we'll do the same thing, but now they're a little bit bigger. So let's see here. I want some here. So I'm going to put a big one here, and it's going to be, and another one here maybe. It's not as big. So first I'm actually painting it pretty much in water. So I'm not putting water everywhere. I'm just like painting an evergreen shape, just using water. I like to do this way. That's how I usually paint my evergreen trees. And I think it's a really good trick to do it this way. And I think I want one that goes maybe like this here. So again, I'm just using clean water, and I'm using my dagger brush, and I'm just dibbly-dabbly, as you can see. And of course I have to be a little careful down here where we have the circle. I don't want to go over that too much. And then I'm just going to dab in some more water just to make sure that it stays wet. And now let's just start out with this green here. And see, now all I have to do is just kind of dab in where I put the water, and it automatically spreads. See, that's what I love about doing it this way. That way I can kind of see where I'm at. And then let's get this one also to show itself to us. And then I have a smaller one down here, like that. And then let's go in and get a little bit more of the brighter green, and we just dab that in. So again, I love to have different colors of green, and we can even go in and do a little bit of this one here. It's like a dark one like that. Some areas would look maybe good. A little bit more of that red in. Because, you know, a lot of times evergreens, they have a little bit of dead needles and stuff like that. So we can get some of that effect in. Take some of the water off and dabbing into my green puddles here. And I have plenty of time as long as it's wet. So let's build this one out a little bit. Get a little bit of it darker there. And I don't mind having, you know, some bare areas in the evergreens, because that's exactly how they are sometimes, you know. They don't have branches everywhere. They have some dead snags here and there. Let's put a little bit more green down here. And make sure that you have your trunks pretty much vertical. Don't have them crooked, you know, in a circle. That can easily happen, and I'm speaking mostly to myself, because that would be something that you could see me forget about. So you can see little by little I'm building on to my little forest here. And maybe I want to have a couple more. See, now I want to go and have some lower ones, and here I don't have water on, so I got to be faster. That's why I like to put the water on, because, you know, it gives you more painting time. So keep that in mind. And I'm just going to drag this out. And again, I'm just keeping an eye on my shapes and seeing if I have anything that I really don't like that looks weird. You don't want weird trees. And of course you can see they're all flowing together. That's how I like it. Let's put one that's a little bit bigger. Let's put one that goes over here. And put a little bit of that red in down here. And maybe even higher than that, like that. And so that's overlapping the other trees, and so we want to make sure that it's darker and brighter. So that means I think I need to grab a little bit more yellow to get it to be a little bit greener and more concentrated pigment. Now of course I don't want to cover up all those beautiful trees that I did there in the background, but we just want to overlap them a little bit. And I'm just dabbing in a little bit more pigment where I feel I need it. And if I feel I need some little extra branches, or sometimes it's extra trunks, just want to make sure. And then here, I think I want to have one more that goes into them a little bit. Let's see. This one here. And I want some more bright yellow. Bright green, I should say. More yellow in so it looks brighter. So this is also great if you have something that you need to cover up, like it's not so good to write down here, it's not so pretty. So I'm just gonna go in and just put a little bit of a tree in there, and then be careful following my little circle there. And we can always fine tune that later. Need be. Let's see. Now I want to grab my little liner brush and get into that red I have here. And I want to emphasize that trunk a little bit and then give it a couple of little snaggy things. And the same here, just emphasize a little bit, and I want to go in there. There we have it. And now I can just fine tune here a little bit. I have there, and let's see. There. So that's pretty good. There's a couple of things I don't care for here. I want that one to be a little bit more like that. Put a couple in here. And I think I could fine tune here a little bit. Make sure you don't have any of your branches that stop right at the ridge of a mountain. That just doesn't look good. It's called tangent lines, and it creates tension in the viewer. So if you want to create tension, then that's what you want to do. Give them some tangent lines. But my paintings are not that kind of paintings. My paintings are feel-good paintings, not feel uncomfortable paintings. There's a place for feel uncomfortable painting if you're doing a political statement or something like that, or you want to draw attention to an injustice or whatever, that kind of stuff. There it would be appropriate to have something built into your painting that will make the viewer feel uncomfortable, like the Guernica painting by Picasso back in the day of the Spanish Civil War. Yeah. That kind of stuff. I think this is pretty good. Need to just let it dry a little bit. And I think, this sky is one of those skies that kind of calls for some birds. Let's put some birds in the sky. Are you game for that? You don't have to if it freaks you out. But, I'm the teacher, so I have to go out on a limb for you. So I'm going to put some birds in. So what I did was I mixed around in the red, the green, and a little of the blue I had over there. Because, those three colors, can you see that kind of makes a blackish color? And then I roll my little rigger brush. So have a nice point. And then I'm going to put some birds in. Try not to put my hand in the wet paint. 6, that's not a good number. Uneven numbers are usually better. All right, now we just have to let it dry. And if we wanted to, and again, I'll do it. You don't have to. I'm going to put a little bit of salt in here, just at the bottom here where it's still wet. Let's see if we get any action, and if we don't, that's okay too. So we're just gonna let it dry, and then we'll do a final evaluation. See what I did right here now, last. That's because I got my hand in a little bit of wet paint, and then that's exactly what happens. But I'm gonna let it dry right now, and then I can take it off. It's a good teaching moment, so I can teach you how to take care of that. So our painting has dried completely. We want to make sure it's completely dry, because otherwise, it's not the time to take the salt off. But it is completely dry, and so I'm just going to take the salt off here. And I really did not get much action from the salt here. I got more earlier. And that is pretty typical, because I had much thicker paint on here, because I had the much more concentrated pigment. And so it doesn't move as easily. So salt action is a lot less, because the pigment just doesn't move as much when you have more pigment and not so watered down. But that's fine. I'm happy with what I got, and I like it. I think it turned out really nice. I was going to show you how we get rid of those little fingerprints that I made there. The first thing we can do is we can try and take, it's not a scrubber brush, it's just a little bit of a stiffer brush. It's one of these short flat masking fluid brushes that I usually don't use for masking fluid, but I use it for exactly this, cleaning up. See, that was easy. And then I just need a clean tissue, dab it. So that was not a problem. That one was not a problem. Always make sure you have clean water and don't have it dripping wet. It's just damp. And then just gently scrub. And if it comes off, great. And if it doesn't, then we can consider other measures. And finally, if you got it like really, really dirty, we could also have painted the background here a dark color, and then it'll change how the image looks. Then the image will look, our painting will look light if we put a really, really dark background around here. So there's that. And I had also one other little area where I got a little bit of a run back here. See if I can get rid of that. Yeah, that's good enough. And do we have anything else? I'm gonna take my little brush here and see if I can just, there's a little fix here. Yeah, maybe there's a little fix here too. And you don't have to do, if you don't have any little areas you feel needs fixing, then you don't have to. And then the other thing we could do is we could decide that we wanted to put a little thin pen line around here. I don't know if I want to. Do I want to? I'm not very good at these things when they have to be straight. I'm challenged that way. I think I've mentioned that before. If I was going to do that, I would probably use this one again. I'm going to risk it. And so it's crucial that you don't move this thing. All right. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And looks like I need to just go in and I wipe my palette clean. So if I hadn't done that, it was because, I've been doing 2 filmings at the same time. So I had to clean up my palette in between. Otherwise, I would still have the puddle that I had earlier. Come on, there we go. Just want to put a little bit, because I can see it just here needs to be cleaned up just a little bit. There we go. So this is the final little detail. And again, you could also have done this landscape not in a circle like I did here, but I think it turned out pretty cute. I like it myself, so I'm just gonna fuss this in a little bit. This is really, really being nitty-gritty, fiddly with it, which is not necessary at all. And then here my purple. Let's try and not get our hands in it now. I smudged a little bit there again. It's really, really good. This is a perfect example of why I like to move my painting around. It's because of that exact thing. It's very, very hard to, not get your hand in the wet paint. So it's definitely safer to have the wet paint way away from you. Once it's dry, I'm going to clean that little thing up. But I'm going to call this finished. I hope you had fun painting this. And it's a great example of atmospheric landscape. So we started with the sky. We tried to get the sky a little bit lighter as it goes down, because that's how it is. And then our first mountain range is very, very pale bluish gray. The next one is a little bit darker, and I warmed it up a little bit. And then the third one I warmed up even more and made it even darker. But I do have that lighter at the bottom here, which I did on purpose because, I wanted to have light behind those dark trees. And I also like it because it almost looks like there's a little mist coming up from the valley there. And then we painted in the distant evergreens with a paler wash of French ultramarine blue, turned green with a little bit of transparent yellow or Nichols yellow. And then we had more pigment in here, and we threw a little bit of red into the mixture here and there to just kind of warm it up and make them look closer. And also, of course, they're taller and they overlap some places the elements we have in the background. And finally, I did put in some birds, and those are just kind of little, you can do like little V's or two eyebrows together. That's really all you need for some birds. And if I want to just put a little bit of water on here where I have a few little salt speckles left that I don't want to have on my finished painting. Doesn't matter so much for up where I live, it's so dry, but if you are living in a damper climate, the salt can theoretically start corroding things, and we don't want that. So you want to have the salt off, you don't want to leave salt on. And so I just saw a couple little sparkles. But anyway, there you have it, a fun, cute little painting that can be repeated many times and with just slight variations. And it's going to be framed in a nice square frame. So here you can see I got a square mat. Of course, now I'm just putting it on top of the watercolor block there, but I think we got a cute little painting here. And the way you take it off is simply palette knife, and you can see there's that opening there, and then you just run your knife in there, and you can take the top sheet of watercolor paper off and make sure that you don't scratch the paper below. But there we have it, and then here's our little mat, and then I would sign it, and it will be a lovely painting to hang on the wall or give to somebody special. So that concludes this class, and we will move on to the next one in this beginner class collection.